The 17th US-Africa Business Summit kicked off on June 22nd in Luanda, Angola, at a critical moment in relations between Washington and the African continent. This comes after US President Donald Trump has promoted a series of cuts and hostile measures. The summit marks a key opportunity for new US and African leaders to engage in dialogue and forge transformative partnerships.
Africa is, if not a new frontier, is one of the destinations where they do business. But in the meantime, it's not just simply telling them to come and invest, but we have to make sure from our side that there is ample arable land and also a very dynamic workforce and a right policy in place. But having said that, in order to do business and indeed attract investors from the United States, I believe the first thing should be building a resilient food system, first thing first. Second, forging a more robust trade connectivity. Third, investment, sustainable investment in value addition.
With a focus on partners in prosperity, US-Africa investment for sustainable growth, the summit aims to foster inclusive, long-term collaborations in sectors like infrastructure, energy, healthcare, digital transformation, agribusiness, creative industries, and sustainable finance. Since its inception, the US-Africa Business Summit has served as a vital platform for advancing US-Africa commercial partnerships.
The African Union Commission views US-Africa private sector collaboration a game changer in our quest for shared prosperity.
Total trade in goods between the United States of America and Africa was estimated at US $71.6 billion in 2024, according to US government data. A strategic rapprochement between Africa and the US was reinforced during the presidency of Joe Biden, who last year made a historic visit to Angola, the first by a sitting US president. Angola's leadership in hosting the event will also highlight Africa's regional integration and economic transformation, particularly through initiatives such as the Lobito Corridor, a key logistics and transport route expected to bolster trade across southern and central Africa. One of Washington's biggest bets in Africa has been the Lobito Corridor, a railway infrastructure linking Angola to the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, Tanzania, considered by the US, the European Union and their regional partners as a strategic pillar for the transport of critical minerals. However, Donald Trump's return to the White House in January 2025 has left African leaders apprehensive about a possible distancing which is materializing through a combination of executive measures, trade and travel restrictions, and public rhetoric. Earlier this year, Donald Trump's administration announced massive cuts to various forms of support for the African continent, including the suspension of some United States Agency for International Development (USAID) projects that, among other things, were associated with the Lobito Corridor and aimed at supporting women farmers. Analysts have warned that these US cuts in development aid could bring southern African countries, including Angola and Mozambique, closer to China. In addition to withdrawing support, Donald Trump, who has a very restrictive anti-immigration policy, signed an executive order earlier this month banning travel to the United States from 12 countries. In an escalation of the crackdown on immigration, a State Department memo released this week by the press shows that this list may include 36 more countries, 25 of them African, including Angola, Cabo Verde, and Sao Tome and Principe. Added to this are the tariffs imposed by the United States and Africa, with the African Development Bank warning of the economic consequences of these measures. The bank said last month that 47 of the 54 African countries will be directly affected by this new US trade policy, which will potentially reduce these nations' export revenues and foreign exchange reserves.
Smart investors should pay attention to Africa. African countries represent 13 out of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world. The New York Times ran a big headline of the world is becoming more African, with 1 in 4 people in the world being African. To feed the world, think Africa. That's because 65% of the uncultivated arable land left in the world is in Africa. To support global energy transition, think Africa. That is because Africa has one of the largest renewable energy potentials in the world and vast reserves of critical minerals and rare earth vital for manufacturing of computers, mobile phones, windmills, aerospace equipment, electric vehicles, and battery energy storage systems. The African Continental Free Trade Area is worth $3.4 trillion. Africa offers high rates of returns on investment. Don't believe me, believe the data. The United Nations Development Program, recent Africa Insights, Investment Insights, shows that investing in Africa gives internal rate of returns of between 15 and 20%. How about confidence of investors? And many of you are here today. Don't believe me, again, believe the data.
Although Africa accounts for about 20% of the world's population and less than 3% of global gross domestic product (GDP), the bank indicated that there is a scenario for growth. 10 of the world's 20 most dynamic economies are in Africa. From June 22 to 25, London is hosting the 17th edition of the US-Africa Business Summit, the most important business forum between the United States and the African continent. More than 1,500 participants, including heads of state, African ministers, senior US government officials, and business leaders from both continents are participating in the summit. The summit will examine Africa's rapidly expanding digital economy driven by increasing investment in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and data centers. These advancements are not only enhancing the continent's digital resilience but also unlocking new opportunities for innovation and economic growth. It will also deliberate on advancing US-Africa energy partnerships, focusing on from dialogue to delivery. As global supply chains recalibrate and the world seeks sustainable and inclusive economic growth, Africa's role as a partner, not just a destination for investment and innovation, is increasingly vital. It also goes beyond US-Africa to take a closer look at other major partnerships that Africa enjoys and the increasing participation of international organizations in the process.